Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome to this February the 8th edition of Carry Your Cross. And as I say every week, thank you for tuning in. It encourages me to know that you are on the other side of this camera, and you glean some encouragement from the Word of God every single week by what God lays upon my heart. So thank you again for tuning in. I want to go straight to one of the Gospels today, notably Mark, the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9, to a very familiar story. Of course, there's a lot of healing that takes place within this particular gospel, but this story focuses upon a little boy who was demon possessed. And the Word of God begins reading here in verse 16 of Mark chapter 9. And he, Jesus, asked them, "What are you discussing with them?" There was a crowd that was standing with each other, and they were focusing upon the dad and his little boy. And in verse 17, one of the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son, possessed with a spirit which makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it slams him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, stiffens out. I told your disciples to cast it out, and they could not do it." Now, that inability is something that I want to focus upon right now. Of course, this little boy was in supernatural need of healing. Back in Mark chapter 6, the disciples had been given authority to cast out demons and to heal. But at this point in time, within this particular situation, by admittance of the Father here, they could not do it. Now the story continues. And he, Jesus, answered them and said, O unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him to me. Now, verse 20, they brought the boy to him. When he saw him, immediately the Spirit threw him, the little boy, into a convulsion, and falling to the ground, he began rolling around and foaming at the mouth, just as he had done, before. Verse 21. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And the father responds, "From childhood. It often throws him into the fire and trying to burn him, into the water, trying to drown him." And then the father says to Jesus, "But if you can do anything, take pity on him and help us." Now, Jesus picks up on the lack of faith here, the uncertainty from this father. And in verse 23, Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible to him who believes." And then Mark writes in verse 24, immediately the boy's father cried out and said, "I do believe. Help my unbelief." Now that's very important. Verse 25, when Jesus saw that a crowd was rapidly gathering, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You deaf and mute spirit, I command you, come out of him and do not enter him again." Verse 26, after crying out and throwing him into terrible convulsions, it came out. And the boy became so much like a corpse that most of them said, "He is dead." Verse 27, but Jesus took him by the hand and raised him, and he got up. So it is a very stressful situation filled with all kinds of excitement and energy and adrenaline. I mean, can you imagine being one of the disciples watching this take place, watching Jesus cast a demon from this little boy? But that's not the end of the story, because all of that to come to verses 28 and 29. Verse 28, when he, Jesus, came into the house with his disciples, after all this takes place, his disciples began questioning him privately. Why could we not drive it out? And then in verse 29, and he said to them, "This kind cannot come out by anything but prayer." Okay? So obviously the disciples were learning something here. Yes, they were confused. Yes, they were frustrated. They came to Jesus in private and said, now Jesus, you gave us the authority to cast demons out. And then all of a sudden, we no longer have that ability. What is going on? What, Jesus, has changed? I'll tell you what changed. The hearts of the disciples had changed. You see, the power of that Christ had given them had not changed. God's power is God's power. There's might, there's energy, there's explosive power involved in what Jesus had given his disciples, but the disciples had compromised that by relying upon their own strength. They had allowed their minds and their hearts to believe that it was all about them, when in reality it remained and continues to remain about him, about God. And I shared this last week in dealing with the mountains in our lives. So many times we think that it's all about us, that we want to move forward in our own strength. But no, Jesus says, listen, and he was reminding the disciples of this here. It's not about you. It's about my power that resides in you, that I have given you. And notice again in verse 29, this kind cannot come out by anything but prayer. You see, Jesus is making the point that the disciples had to be plugged in to him. His disciples' ability to do the supernatural did not rely upon themselves. It relied upon the person and the presence and the power of the Son of God. It's kind of like this. You can't see this, but I have a lamp here in my office behind the camera here. And back in July, as I was getting my office put together, of course, this lamp was part of the decor that I wanted to put here. And the cord got back behind one of the bookcases, and I could not see the cord. And I walked over to the lamp, and I'd flip the switch, or the little turn thing, 1, 2, 3, the light wouldn't come on. So what do? I go to the store and I buy a brand new bulb. And I come back and I put it in there, and I click once, click twice, click 3 times, and the bulb does not come on. And then, it's like having a V8, this kind of moment. I said, my goodness, did I just waste a trip to the store to buy a brand new bulb, and the lamp was, it was not plugged in? So I looked behind the bookcase, and of course, the electrical outlet, the cord was not plugged into the electrical outlet, so the moral of the story is, Lane, if you plug the lamp in, it would have worked from the start. And the same illustration is taking place here. The disciples learned a lasting lesson that it's about the power that only Christ can give. We, as believers, have to plug into that power in order to be able to live the Christ life. The disciples walked away from the house that day understanding that it wasn't about them. It was all about him. It was all about Christ. And it was all about prayer, plugging into that power that only Christ can provide. So my question to you today is a very simple one, but it's a very convicting one. Do you pray? And if you do, how often do you pray? Well, you say, well, Lane, before I eat a meal, I'll bow my head and I'll pray. Or when I get into a tight situation and, I have no other place to go, then I pray. I'm not necessarily talking about those 2 instances. I'm talking about, do you pray consistently? Not just during the bad times, not just when the pressure comes, not just when there's a mountain in front of you that needs to be moved. I'm talking about every single day when life is good, when things are going your way. Do you literally find time to go into your prayer closet and to say, Jesus, thank you. Thank you for giving me your strength. Thank you for giving me the ability to talk about you and the strength that you've given me to proclaim your name to whoever I'm with, no matter what I'm doing or where I'm at. We as well have the responsibility to plug in to the power of God through Christ. And I believe one way that we do that is by plugging into our time with Him through prayer. So I pray today, not just during the bad times, but also during the good times, consistently, we will find time, whether it be in the morning, noon, night, whenever, that we can pull away and we can go into our prayer closets and say, Jesus, I'm here to be recharged. I'm here to plug into you and to have your presence and your power be realized within my heart and life, because I'm spending time with you. It's not about me. It's all about you. So I pray today that you will continue to move forward and you'll put one foot in front of the other. You will continue to carry your cross, knowing that this life that we're living, this journey that we're on, is not about us. It's all about Him. Until next time, this is Lane Collins, Senior Pastor here at Mount Calvary Baptist Church, letting you know that you are prayed for and you are loved. Until next time, God bless you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Carry Your Cross today. If you would like to view further videos, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to us on YouTube. God bless.